Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Friends of Mortgage Hero Show. I'm Andy.
I'm Will.
And today we have our friend Sophia Gallardo with us today from McGovern Law Group. They do trust and estate planning, and we wanted to bring her in to talk all about kind of what is the things people need to know when it comes to trust and estate with real estate, in addition to their own personal finances and protecting legacy and that kind of thing. But also, I always know there's an interesting story or two that comes along with the show. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna talk to you a little bit about it today, learn about you, what you do at McGovern Law, and then what it is you want people to know about. That's like really important for them to consider. If they haven't done, they should do, or even if they've already done this, they've charted this course for themselves with trust and estate. What are some things they should be looking at in the horizon for 2024? It's a brand new year, so what is it we want people to know about? So we're gonna go ahead and get going on all that.
Well, first of all, let's allow her to introduce herself, right? We want to know. This is something we've been waiting for.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Will. I'm happy to be here. And I know we've been talking a lot about, getting here on the show. So it's awesome to finally be here and share a little bit more about what I do every day and just kind of share a little bit about myself as well.
Awesome. Well, tell our audience what your name is.
Yes, my name is Sophia Gallardo.
Who you work with and how long you've been here.
Sure. I work with the McGovern Law Group. I have been practicing and going now into my third year of practice. I am a Chula Vista native. Born and raised here, Spanish speaker as well, and excited to be sharing a lot more about estate planning with all of you.
That's awesome. And once again, we cannot thank you enough for being a part of this. We're building this whole Friends of Mortgage Heroes to give back to our community, to give them information, give them knowledge, how to protect their assets. Mm-hmm. Like literally, right? Their assets. We need to protect that. You guys need to protect that. So, tell us, what made you get into this industry?
Yeah, so I started actually piquing an interest in estate planning when I was a sophomore in college. So I was a psychology major, and I started noticing that my peers were a little bit more interested in wanting to pursue more of a field in psychology. And I thought, well, I'm not as passionate as them. I don't know what's missing here. So I reached out to an advisor at the campus, and I went to school on the East Coast in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And she said, well, take the summer to think about what you want to pursue. And the first thing that came to mind was, what about law school? So I was introduced to an estate planning attorney here in San Diego, was a family friend of my parents. And I sat in on a couple meetings with her in estate planning, and I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. This is the field I want to go into. So for me, it was the personal aspect where you get to sit down with the client, you get to know their family information, their goals for their family, and then again, their assets, how you want to protect that.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I like that word you use, personal, because that's why I feel in my industry too. It's that personal touch. So I like that you're putting that, but that's, I can see that.
Was there like a specific key moment where you realized, oh, this is it? What, did something like that happen, or was it kind of like a slow burn? Like, I think I'm just getting this direction. Yeah, it's that direction.
It was definitely progressive. I think once I was with that attorney during that summer, I thought, okay, this is something I want to dive into. I did get into law school, and then my first 2 years, I did internships outside of estate planning to confirm if there was anything else that I wanted to do. So I did a pro bono legal clinic in law school, touched on family law, real estate, criminal, and I thought, no. And then finally I'm like, okay, let's look into estate planning again, and it just confirmed I was in the right spot.
That's awesome.
I'm glad I wasn't criminal, because I'd be calling you then.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people say. Who's going to bail me out?
We have a mutual friend who is a criminal defense attorney, Richard Arroyo, and I was talking with him the other day, and we were talking about how what this year is going to look like. It's it's a brand new year, and he's like, well, crime's going to be on the rise. I'm like, okay, hold on. Still lots of criminals to defend, but hey.
That's awesome. I mean, you sound so smart. You're so giggly and happy. I love that.
Thank
so
you.
I know we've sent a couple of clients your way, and I know they talk nothing but good things about that. So really, thank you. And that's why I thought this was the perfect time to have you here, because I think the targeted area would be people who own homes, right?
Yes.
How important is it for them to, obtain your services?
Absolutely. It's very important. So when we're talking about owning a home in San Diego, as you both know, rates are high, purchase values are high.
You know that.
So in California, if you pass away with an asset held in your individual name, for example, a home, and that asset is worth more than $184,500, that's the current probate threshold. So if it's worth more than that, which obviously a home in San Diego is worth way more than that,
so.
It will trigger probate court. And so that means that that family, those loved ones, are going to have to go through that court process to receive that property because it was only held under their name.
Okay.
So holding a property in trust will allow you to avoid probate court.
Wow. What is something like, what's a rough idea? Like, let's say, I mean, I have the property under my name. I think it's pretty cool. It's my name, right?
Yes.
I own it. So what would be the well, obviously there's a disadvantage to that, but what would be a cost? Like, say something happened to me and I have no trust or anything. What would be a cost for that?
Yeah, so in California, we have probate code, which is statute based, that tells us exactly how much an attorney is going to get paid if we go through that probate process. So let's say that you have a home that you passed away and that home was worth $800,000. Well, that formula is going to be that they'll take the first 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 100,000, 2% of the next 800,000, 1% of the next 9 million.
Interesting.
So using $800,000, if my math is correct, then $19,000 will go to an attorney just to go through probate and allow that home to be distributed to maybe your 3 children or surviving spouse. So again, it likely is going to, number one, cost a lot of money and take a lot of time.
And then the alternative, of course, if you have your house in a trust, tell us about what that looks like, different from having to go the probate route.
Absolutely. So you were mentioning about having, being in control, having this house with your name on it, absolutely a wonderful accomplishment, but a trust still allows you to be in control.
Okay.
You have the ability to nominate what's known as successor trustees to administer your trust.
Gotcha.
If you have a mental incapacity event during your life, they can step in, manage that home if you can't, for yourself, for your family. And then by including that property under the name of the trust, it will easily transfer to those named beneficiaries that you've designated.
Got it.
Now, I know that there's some not thresholds, but there's like limits for taxation on the amount of the asset that's being transferred to family members. What should people know about right now as it pertains to the rule? How much money can be transferred of a property through a trust to that person? What does the tax basis change? When does it change? Let's talk about a little bit of that on the technical side.
Yeah, so looking at, there's going to be 2 separate types of taxes that come into play. So looking at first federal side, there's something known as a federal estate threshold, which is at right now for an individual $12 million.
Okay.
But that's set to sunset in 2026. So we're a couple years away from
Jesus.
that. So right now, if you pass away and your assets are worth less than $12 million, then your beneficiaries won't have to worry about paying a tax. But if it's worth more than $12 million, then anything above that $12 million taxes will be owed.
Wow.
There's also the property taxes here that I'm sure you guys deal with a lot on a daily basis. So by transferring a home through a trust, you allow that step up in basis. So basis is, the value of when you're purchasing the property. So if somebody, like a parent, purchased a home in early 2000s worth $200,000, now it's worth $800,000. There's a $600,000 gain there. If you were to transfer it right now, and in 2 years or less than 2 years, I were to sell that home, I would have to pay a tax on that gain. But if I'm transferring it to my child through a trust, they receive the step up in basis to the fair market value of when I've passed away at that time.
So it's from the date of death,
Date
right?
of death valuation,
got it.
correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty good stuff.
Interesting.
Helpful.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I don't know if that's well known. And so I want to make sure you give explanation for that, because that's a huge thing, especially when you're talking about, let's say 20 or 30 years between the time in which someone bought a house here in San Diego and then it's transferring to their next of kin or whoever they're leaving it for. That could be a huge tax cost to somebody, but not if you have a estate plan in place.
Gotcha. I'm still kind of fixated on the 19,000.
Yeah, the probate.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to go back that way, right? But for me, it's all about numbers, because, what normal person will have 19,000 just laying around, right? So that's when we're talking about the 19,000, that's when everything's already settled with the probate.
Correct.
That's not like a retainer fee with an attorney, or is there a retaining fee for that in addition?
Yes. So when an individual passes away, let's say it's a father, the daughter is coming to us to administer that estate, says, I have no idea what to do. He had a house under his name. Where do we start? So step one is to file a petition with the court. And so our office would take care of doing all of those legal fees. So we would charge a retainer to, of course, allow us to record that. Just recording a petition's worth about, I think, $400 to $700.
Okay.
So that's the initial fee to get started.
That's not bad.
Not bad.
That's not going to break my piggy bank. Okay.
Starting there.
That's the entry cost.
Okay. Oh, there's more.
That's your ticket to get in.
Wait, that's 19,700. Okay. Okay.
We're adding it up. Yep. And then there's obviously publication fees. So probate court is obviously, it's going to be public. Anytime you're going through court, it's likely going to be public. So if I just have the name of the decedent, I can go online and see the assets that person has. I can see, who's going to be receiving those assets, if they have any debts. So that's another feature that tends to scare people away from probate because it's public, and this is now going to be public information. But there's a fee associated with making it public.
Of course, inflation.
Yep. Everybody's getting paid through probate. Yeah.
Wow.
And I've heard some probate stories before where it's tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, and depending on the size of the whole estate, it could be even north of $100,000 when it's all said and done. But I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars that have to be dispersed and whatever, and debtors have to be paid off, and people have to be made whole and all that. But I think the thing that people should realize, there's a lot more that needs to be done upon the death of somebody who owns a lot of things or has a lot of things that their name's connected to. There are a lot of steps, and very few of them you can do on your own.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've heard like if you have some type of debt, credit card debt or medical debts, that they get paid through the probate also.
Yep, it's correct. So
it's not 19,700 yet plus the publishing.
Yeah.
There's more.
There's no cash yet.
And then you can't even touch it yet because you don't own it. So going through probate. So before you're even able to inherit, you have to still pay off all those people.
What?
So because you mentioned your creditors, a probate matter is public, so all the creditors here are going to be making a note of, oh, this person died. Oh, yeah, they owe me something. I'm going to go tag on a creditor's claim for $10,000 for a medical bill, right? It continues to add on. And something else with probate is you do have to name, or an administrator is going to be named to go ahead and administer that estate, so that person also gets $19,000. The same amount that the attorney gets paid, that individual's entitled to the same amount.
What's the math on that now?
That's already $38,000 plus your price of admission.
$750 plus a publication.
$400 to $700. Yeah, you're already at 30.
Are you kidding?
You're going to be at 50 right now.
Wait a minute. You're kidding me right now.
No, she's not. No, it's $38,000 and change on an $800,000 transfer of asset.
And that's and the hard part too, and as I was thinking about some probate cases on my way here, a lot of times we deal with families where the only asset they have is one home.
Is the house. Yeah.
That's it. And so essentially if that was your family home where 2 adult children were living there, and they're likely going to be forced to sell it because they need to pay off all of these individuals.
And we're on the front end of that. I mean, we talk with people where we're literally just helping them buy their largest asset.
Right.
It's their largest monthly payment, their mortgage payment, and it's their largest tax deduction, which is the mortgage interest and all that other stuff. So, we're already 3 of those largest buckets of things. And then on the other side, at the end of it, this can create quite a problem for people. And I don't know that maybe as many people that should be aware of this are aware of this because they go, I don't want to have a trust estate. Isn't that expensive to make one? Oh yeah, it could be 2,
Not as.
3, 4. I mean, even let's say you spend $5,000 or $6,000 to get a trust in a estate if you got a lot to pack in it, right? Okay. Right now, $6,000 sounds a lot more appetizing to me than $38,000.
Yeah. Again, that's why I'm so grateful and thankful you're here, right? Because we are getting people in the biggest debt of their lives. I mean, that's the honest truth. Is what we do. And hopefully at the end, when they close, they smile and they say, thank you for doing that, right? So now, how do we help them protect that? And that's where you come in because you're sharing this, the cost, $19,000 for this, $19,000, the $700, the published, and it's not over, right? Because what if they have medical bills and all that? How does that work into this? And then the county, is the county get involved in any of this?
Yeah. So it's
yes.
It's
oh my
hard.
God.
It's hard. So, and also, we're talking about, well, let's say one family or a family has one home. But yeah, if you have multiple properties here, then a lot of people are concerned, well, all these unintended hands may be getting in there,
God,
right?
I like that unintended hands.
Unintended hands, yeah. So the way probate works here, and this is going to tie into a trust with having control. But with probate, it's called dying intestate, which means you died without a will. So if you died without a will and without a trust, you didn't tell anybody how your assets are supposed to be distributed, right? So if you pass away, you're single, but you have 3 children, those 3 children are going to inherit. But that also includes if you had a child that predeceased the decedent. If they had their own children, that grandchild or grandchildren.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Will also inherit. Yeah, intestate succession
interesting.
kind of goes down the line. So let's say it's 3 children, but that one child passed away before mom and dad. That child had 3 of their own kids. They inherit.
So it would be your 2 living children plus the grandchildren.
Plus the grandchildren.
Oh, interesting. I did not
Yeah.
know that.
Crazy.
So
Yeah.
is there an end to that generationally? Or?
So it talks about at what generation is there somebody living. So we start at the children. If there is somebody in that bloodline that's alive, okay, let's see who's alive. But if there is somebody who's passed in that section, but other siblings are still, we go down to their issue,
Wow.
which is children.
Okay. I didn't know that.
This is when you wish they didn't invent the Ancestry.com
Yeah.
thing, right?
We'll
'Cause
find
then you'll
them.
get them all.
I passed away and all of a sudden I have 30 new relatives.
No, there is actually, so I do a lot of probates in San Diego, but I had a probate matter in Riverside, and they actually make you take a screenshot or send in some documents on Ancestry.com.
Wow.
No,
I was
really?
just messing with
Yeah.
that. Look at that.
Really?
Yes, to make sure these are the heirs. Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's
Please keep
interesting.
going. I mean, I'm liking
That's
this. I'm
fascinating.
just like, whoa.
That's fascinating. Yeah,
So
just keep going.
We had a probate matter at my last firm where there was a total of 11 beneficiaries, but when I started on the case, there was only 3. And my boss was like, well, why don't you call the family, confirm we have all their addresses, phone numbers. Okay, give them a call. I talked to one of the children, and they're like, well, actually, I had 2 other siblings. They passed away. I'm like, do they have children? And yes, sure enough. So we
Oh.
had 11 beneficiaries. They were shocked that they were receiving something, and it just extended the time period, of course, and those disbursements got smaller and smaller.
Oh, wow.
For each family
It's
member.
crazy. I'm going to share a personal story. As a matter of fact, my grandfather owned his home in LA, and then he owned a lot, and he had 2 units there. He passed away just like you mentioned, no will, no trust, anything. So fast forward years later, one of my cousins decided like, hey, I should inherit some of that. My dad should inherit some of that. Why is it going just to my aunt, right? So years later, I received this check for $2,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, what is this for? So I called, and they were like, oh, it's because you were, my dad passed. So they gave one to my sister and one to me. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? It's 2,000. And, I was a Carnival cruiser. So I went on Carnival on a cruise.
Perfect.
And I created some memories with that.
There you go.
But if you really think about the price of the home and the land, I mean, come on, 2,000. That's I'm now understanding why it was 2,000.
And in your case too, it's nice. Maybe at that point, that family member would have wanted you to receive something. But in our case, we see a lot of times where those are beneficiaries that weren't meant to receive something, and they probably shouldn't have, right? Because they maybe didn't have a good relationship with that owner of that home or that property, where a trust would have allowed them to say, no, at any cost, this person will not inherit.
So the lesson here then is being proactive gets
Correct.
you get to determine in advance who gets what and why, and then they can't argue with you when you're dead.
Nope.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm just still crazy. So the 1919 7 publication. There's got to be county there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Putting your property in a trust does not avoid Proposition 19.
Dang.
So that is something.
So wait, so what you're nicely telling me is, Andy, there is no solution.
Not right now. No.
Wow. Okay. So if you're watching and you can help us come up with a solution, we would really like your help with a solution for this particular problem.
Prop 19, that'd be great.
Now, in this case, you were mentioning you have 2 sisters. You have 3 sisters.
I do have 3 sisters.
You have
two,
3 sisters.
two
You're one of 4.
sisters,
Okay.
And then a half sister. Yeah.
Okay, got it. I think are you a twin or a
twin.
triplet? You're
Yes.
a twin. Okay.
What?
I
Yeah.
have one sister who's only
So
a
we
year
get to see
younger.
another beautiful. All right.
She's not an attorney.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
That's awesome.
There's still time.
No, she loves what she does. She's a pediatric physical
Oh.
therapist.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
You're all smart.
That's really
Jesus
great.
goodness.
That's fun.
So tell us about a case where, right now, so in this show, a lot of people are learning some things for the first time, including us, about
Of course.
the whole trust process, probate, intestate, and all that.
Yep.
And this whole tax thing is, I'm tripping on that. But let's talk just practically for people who they own a home, they're married, they have a kid, or maybe they're just married, they don't even have kids. But why should they get, other than the reasons we've scared them with today?
Yeah.
Why should someone spend the money to get a trust?
Yeah, so the main thing here is you're get to set up kind of a generational wealth for your family, where you get to determine, right, who's going to be receiving and at what age. A lot of times when you have growing families, they have minor children where you want to protect their assets if anything happens to you when they're still young, when they're still minors. So you can set up in a trust, age intervals for your children to receive inheritance in certain ages. But it's also a way of, again, you being in control of managing those assets. So a lot of times you mentioned control as well, where you want to be in control, you want to continue managing those assets. But sometimes in our lives, we have times where we may be deemed mentally incapacitated, right? Later on in life, where at that time it's too late to decide who's going to step in. So with the trust, again, like you said, proactively, you're able to determine, well, who's going to manage my assets here on my behalf, for my benefit, for my care, if I can't. And a lot of people don't know that with the trust, that it is going to provide for if you have a mental incapacity.
Well, that's awesome. that's also kind of dipping your toe into it, like advanced healthcare directive stuff too, right? Okay, so how does that work? So people, first of all, I'm dropping a term that I'm not sure everyone knows about. So if you don't know what an advanced healthcare directive is, Sophia's going to explain it in 3, 2, 1.
So there's 2 types of powers of attorney: power of attorney for financial and personal decisions, and then the healthcare directive, healthcare decision making on your behalf. So the financial aspect here is any accounts that you may have that are solely held under your name that you likely can't put into a trust. For example, SDG&E bill, a phone bill, a credit card bill, where if you do get deemed mentally incapacitated, who can continue making those phone calls or those bills or writing checks for you? That's where the power of attorney comes in.
Got it.
Healthcare is going to be if you can't make any medical decisions on your behalf, who's going to continue to make those decisions for you? And again, you get to decide who those individuals are. We like to just say 3 or 4 down the line, some alternates there for backups.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm
crazy.
listening to you explain all this. I'm thinking about situations in my own house or my own, not just my own house, but I mean like with my own daughters, yes, but also my grandfather. He was into doing all this through the 80s, and he passed away early 2000s, and he had a lot of stuff set up for us. It was really awesome. But it didn't mean I understood everything just because he had executed it well on his end. So it seems to me though that you're ending up having to have conversations with people and talking about things that they may have not encountered emotionally on their end, like having to face, who would make choices on my behalf if I'm incapacitated and I can't choose? Yeah. And what do I want?
Yep.
That's just crazy.
Think about that. Like,
because you got like 10 kids.
Yeah. Well, no, if you think we're doing like trust in estate, I'm just saying I'm a trust in estate. But if within that, I'm also having to confront the reality of deciding who is going to decide if I live or die, if I end up on a machine and the machine's keeping me alive. Like, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that.
Well,
except if I'm going to come meet with you, then apparently we're thinking about that.
Yeah, and to that, your point there with that living will question of whether to prolong or not to prolong my life, that is actually your decision that you get to make, and your agent will uphold that decision. So in the healthcare directive,
there's everything in this, Sophia. Like, this is pretty crazy and pretty wild, right? Like there's a lot of details in this.
Well, and I'm realizing in this conversation that you're finding yourself in the middle of like people confronting these types of questions probably for the first time, or maybe they visited it really quickly and like, put that back there. I don't want to confront the idea that I might die someday. But if you don't do that, there is a consequence to your family that you leave behind and the things that you own, and maybe seeing it go to the right place or to the wrong people. I mean, we had another guest on the show who was an attorney talking about real estate law and how the assets that were left behind for someone were very wildly misspent by the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so money went to somebody who did not use it in a very moral way. And that is not the way I would want to see my hard-earned money go if I'm going to be able to pre-decide where it should go and to who and when. Wow.
No, I'm glad that you brought out your story, right? obviously you weren't ready when your grandfather passed away.
Right.
You know, you don't know all the details, all the facts, nor did you care at that point in time because that wasn't something that was probably important to you. Kids are young probably at that point in time. Now that they're getting older, you know, I think that's why they have the older the wiser, right?
Yeah.
And you do start becoming a little more wiser, and you want to actually protect your asses, protect your family in case of anything happening to you. You know, you want to have these other avenues, these other exit strategies where your family's going to succeed and not lose $19,000 for this, $19,000 for that $700, and then here's your publication fee. Like, come on now.
And in his case, it was a trip and fall. He had actually fallen in the parking lot of a medical. He was at a medical appointment. He tripped and fell, hit his head, ended up in the hospital, and my grandmother had to decide if he was going to stay or go. Right. And in his advanced healthcare directive, it said, if machines are the only thing keeping me alive, let me go. Yeah. And I had to watch my grandma decide to say, let him go. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, this is happening right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I like knew he had all this stuff set up, but I didn't see it until like, you know, after all the dust settles and we go, oh my gosh, he had everything planned out. Yeah. I mean, he was a smart dude anyways, but it also stresses the importance, like he fell in a parking lot and he had brain bleed and they had to revive him 5 times.
Unexpected, yeah.
Right. So he didn't know when it was going to come. No. For all I know, he thought, oh, I'm just going to die when I'm old and I'm 110 or whatever, not when I'm 75 and walking back to my car from a doctor's appointment. So you just don't know.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. And again, thanks for sharing that. But it's just me. I have my trust. I have my will. I have everything. Luckily, you know, who I surrounded myself with allowed me to understand that was very important. So I established mine back in 2003, I want to say 2004. Yeah. You know, which is great. They say you should review it every certain years. I don't remember the last time I did that, right? Okay. But thank you for bringing all this up, right?
Absolutely. Like, I know it's a lot.
So I don't, most of the people that we get in homes, they don't understand that, Sophia. Yeah. So what is it that do you see the same thing like in your field? Like when people come to you, they probably tell you, yeah, mi papá or my mom, they don't have it, right? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I speak Spanish. I'm Mexican, 100%. And so I have a lot of family who obviously knows that I practice estate planning. So for example, I have cousins who they have their father, my uncle, who's in his 70s. Hopefully I'm not, being rude and saying that, but I think he's 70.
He's young 70.
Yeah, he's young. He looks young. And he thankfully has loving children who said, Dad, we know that, his life partner just passed away and said, it's just you now. We want to make sure that whatever small, big things you have are protected. And I met with him. He came into my office. We actually just did a will for him. He didn't need a trust because his assets weren't going to be above the probate threshold. Okay. So we can talk about the difference between trust and a will in a moment. But so I met with him and he came back for his second meeting, signed off on everything, and he started crying. And I said, Theo, why are you crying? What's going on? He's like, I'm scared that if I sign this, I'm gonna die, And it hit home because it was, this may be what's holding a lot of people back. Is they think, well, if I'm now talking about death or thinking about it, it may happen.
You're speaking life to it or something,
right?
Oh,
yeah.
That's crazy.
So it was really powerful to see that, but also see the strength that he had of just, no, it's okay. Like I'd rather have my kids be okay and have everything in line. And he's still going. It's been a few years.
Good, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that is me being also Hispanic. I know that's the thing. Like I believed in having, life insurance for my kids. Right. And I do, whole life because I like to invest and all that good stuff for them. But in our culture, it's almost like an omen, right? Like if you do that, what you're saying is, eso te va a pasar, that's going to happen.
Exactly.
I'm glad you brought that up. That is a great thing. So it doesn't happen. It doesn't.
And you know what's interesting, and I didn't think I was going to say this on this show today, but, I was having a conversation recently with somebody is that, what you're doing is more important than how you feel about doing it.
Correct.
And I think that applies here 100% because, I might not feel right about having to make these choices or confront these conversations, these questions, but how I feel about it is less important than what I am doing and setting up for my children and then my children's children in the future. Exactly. So if you are watching this and you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this sucks. I don't want to talk about that stuff. Yeah. I had to personally sideline some of my own feelings and emotions in doing the same things to set up the right thing for all my daughters. So there's some gentle encouragement for you.
And the great thing we have Sophia here, so she's so nice, so personal, as you can see.
I'll hand you a tissue, whatever you need.
There you go.
Support.
Thank you. So please.
Yeah.
Tell us about like a scenario that is like really ideal, like maybe a case you've worked on recently, or not a case, not a case. What do you call it?
Probate case.
Just because she's an attorney.
Probate case. I know. It's you're an attorney. Legal speak. Tell us about something you've worked on where you're like, this is kind of the bread and butter. It's a traditional or most often kind of seen thing that people can like maybe relate to, that they're watching. Oh, that sounds like me, looks like me. That could help someone like me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just recently met with a couple yesterday who was actually a referral, and they have 2 adult sons, one in college, one just finished college, and they have 3 properties, 2 rental properties, 1 personal residence. And they sat down, they said, we know we need a trust, but we don't know why. So really what we do when we meet with clients is we dive into kind of what we're talking about here, probate education. What are the reasons why we want to avoid probate? Again, being in control, limiting those costs, those fees, but also upholding that intent.
Gotcha.
I think when we're talking about with our clients with a trust, it's okay, what is your say? What is let's hear your voice. And so I think that was, for me, it was seeing that they wanted to protect their children. They had that list ready to go of who are going to be my successor trustees, of course, distribution 50-50 between their sons.
Wow.
So it was just very pretty and like nice with the bow. When we got to the questions of advanced healthcare directives, they knew, nope, don't keep me on. It's not for me. It's funny. I've had a couple before who came in, I think they were like in law enforcement or something, but they had a different sense of humor where I brought up that question of, do you choose to prolong, not to prolong? They both started laughing. I was like, okay, well.
This is easier.
Yeah. I was like, is that good or bad? Are you going to start crying now?
No, don't keep them alive, right?
Yeah. I'm like,
don't move until they stop laughing.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So they're like, sorry, we have to, different sense of humor about this.
That's funny.
Everybody's different. I think what I do like, though, about clients is when they meet with individuals like yourselves who are professionals in the field, and if they're hearing it from a professional saying a trust is important, it's something that you should consider. They think, okay, if I trust this professional with, again, a large investment here, maybe what they're telling me is going to, carry some weight. So
well, and there's a cost consequence to making the alternative your outcome, which is the math he's over here doing on this paper.
Still writing down.
He's been adding the whole time. No, there's a cost consequence. There really is. And I think that out of fear or out of this, I don't want to confront or punch my ticket to a quicker death by having this conversation. Well, it's going to end up costing. And here's the other thing too. And I didn't know if this was going to come up or not, but I have heard cases where families break up because of money. And because of stuff going to someone, or someone got equal shares or unequal shares. And even before ancestors pass away, people arguing about who's going to get what and all this. Yeah. So like there's a way to avoid that by doing all this. And so like maybe one of the takeaways here is like, if for nothing more, spend the time and the money to make decisions today that will impact the people you're leaving behind, so that if they don't be mad at anybody, it could be you. And again, you ain't here to argue with. So
exactly. And the thing, these things are avoidable. It's avoidable, right? And what do they need to do to avoid this? Going into probate, what do they need to do, Sophia?
Get a trust. And so we normally say it's 2 steps. So the first step is to meet with an attorney and talk about it. It's, establish it, design it. And then step 2 is to fund your trust. So it's not enough to just create a trust and say, okay, look, I have a trust, it's done. Step 2 is to actually, for a real property, record a deed that now reflects the trust as the owner of the home. When you have accounts, go to those institutions and show them this document. It's called a certification of trust, where you're certifying and declaring you do have a valid trust.
And is that a change of ownership too in some cases?
Sometimes if there is an incapacity event and a trustee is going to now step in, you do an affidavit change of trustee and you show that. You can also record that document. But tying it into a little bit with what you guys deal with and helping individuals with their homes, that certification of trust, so you might have one from 2003, it continues on. So let's say that I met with that client, that couple I just met with yesterday, and I gave them that certification of trust, and they want to invest in a new property now because that's just what they do. They already have 3. If they do that, they automatically just take that certification of trust to title and say, hey, before you close on this and put it under my name, don't do that. Put it automatically under the trust name. And you continue to just funnel everything into the trust. So those are the 2 steps. Very important to fund your trust because that allows you to hold those assets in the trust.
Got it. And that's what you call funding the trust.
Funding, correct.
So let's talk in specifics so that we can clarify for people watching and listening. What are some of the things that people should put inside their trust?
So obviously any real property. And then when it comes to bank accounts, checking and savings, you can include those under the name of the trust. We also have people who have business interests. So if you have an LLC, S Corp, you can assign your interest to the trust. So if you do have a successor trustee that you name, they can go step in and manage those accounts for you. Also life insurance, if you, let's say you want to name your children there, but you don't really want them to, their individual names to be listed, you can list the trust name. Retirement accounts can be a little tricky. We recommend leaving those under your own name as an owner, but you can name the trust as a beneficiary.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is that for tax reasons or
Yes,
why is that tricky?
Correct. Yeah. It gets to be if the owner is seen as the trust, there may be some tax implications there once we distribute that.
Got it.
So if you're married, we recommend spouse, primary beneficiary to continue things
Got
normal.
it. Okay. And then the trust after
as
that.
a
Okay.
contingent.
That makes sense. I get that.
Yeah.
I didn't think through that before I asked that, but that makes sense.
A lot of layers.
Yeah.
A
No
lot.
kidding.
Yes, a lot of stuff.
I guess this is also why you pay someone to do it.
Now it's making sense.
Yeah.
I would love to know something quirky, weird, odd, or different without naming names that someone has put in the trust, and you're like, huh, that's unique.
Oh man. Well, I guess.
Or do you have a list?
Yeah. No.
pick the top 30 and go ahead.
One thing that I love though, and if we have any dog lovers, there's something known as pet trust.
I was going to say that.
you
I
can
heard
create.
about. Okay, I heard about that.
Yeah, so I've done a couple of these where it's a normal trust, revocable trust. You name other beneficiaries, but they love their dogs, they love their cats, and you can name a specific trust within your trust for your pets. So you can do a successor trustee for that trust. You can do a caretaker. You can allot money so that your dog or cat can be protected.
Some celebrity gave like $100 million to their dog, right? Or 150. Who was it? I can't remember who it was. I saw some story. I'm gonna have to go back and find it.
There is a
But
Netflix show on that.
Yeah,
Oh,
someone
yeah.
gave their dog and like blacklisted the family and gave the dog like $100 million. I was
Unreal.
like, what? The dog ain't gonna
Yeah.
use that many
Listen,
toys.
at this point in time, I wish I was a dog, but I'm
Yeah.
not because dogs only live a certain amount of lives, right?
A rich dog.
Yeah, right. Pfft, they're going to probably live to like
Wow.
16, 17, if that.
But that's also because at some point in time there was a fight. There was a fight. There's no way you're naming your dog first.
No.
I mean,
No.
Now, can the dog assign, like, let's say the dog passes and he still has, like, in this case,
Not the dog.
999 million?
They put names on the table and the dog puts their paw on
The
who
paw.
gets money.
That would be awesome. No,
Right?
but the owner does. So, like, let's say the dog does die, they can say, okay, then it goes to this person or this charity or something.
Yeah.
But,
Can you imagine?
yeah.
You're lower than my dog, so
Yeah.
the dog
That's
gets
crazy.
first
I
dibs. You get the
know.
scraps.
Imagine reading the trust, being like,
No.
really, the dog got more?
But again, I'm going to go back. There's family bitterness and all that kind of stuff. Okay. What's something else weird that people have put in their trust that you're like, oh, okay, that's an interesting thing to put in there?
I don't know. They got a lot of questions on like vehicles or anything fun that they use for the desert. Like, can I include that in there?
Oh,
And
okay.
it's just like, well,
So,
yeah,
like,
you
toys
can.
and stuff.
They're toys, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing too funky that I've
Nothing
seen.
weird?
Not
Okay.
yet.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
Either way, I think people, they need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
More people need to understand the power of having a trust, having
Yes.
a will, having a power of attorney if anything happens,
Yeah.
And accidents do happen. I'm sorry that happened to your grandpa, I
Yeah.
really do. And my condolences. I know it's been many years, but still, sometimes it's just like it happened yesterday. And I'm just glad that he was just so responsible to be able to put his wife in a different position,
Yes.
because
Yes.
there's a lot of things that happen in life where, we work with a lot of military, and it's unfortunate, but that's a dangerous field to be in,
Yes.
especially when they're getting deployed. And, thank you everybody for your service. But there's things that they can happen over there.
Yeah.
And the wife is sitting here. They have an SGLI that thinks, oh, that's like a life insurance. Oh, it's not
No,
enough.
no.
It's not enough. It's a proven statistic that it'll take you around 10 to 12 years for your wife to live the same lifestyle she's living right now after they lose a significant other.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And so I hate hearing those stories, especially when people own them. Like if you have it in a trust and you put all that stuff
Yes.
where it's supposed to be at,
Yes.
right? And you follow the professionals here, then it just makes you feel that much better.
Yeah.
I can go and take on a trip. I can get in there in a plane and go with my wife. If something happens, my kids will be taken care of.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the big thing that I wanted to add here was the difference between a trust and a will. I think sometimes people think, I have a will, I'm good, I'm covered, and it's not enough, kind of like you're mentioning with life insurance. So the main thing here is if you have a will cannot hold property. So we just talked about funding the trust. So again, if your assets are held in your individual name and they're worth more than $184,500, which is the probate threshold, and you only had a will, we'll follow the terms of the will. That's called testate, different from intestate, where we'll follow, okay, this distribution goes to your child, your son, daughter, whatever you want, right? But we still have to go through probate to administer that will if you have, those assets above the probate threshold. So what we do is we create both. You mentioned you had both.
Yeah.
So we do a trust and then what's known as a pour-over will, where it has language that ties it back to your trust. So it says, for example, if I have a bank account that didn't make it into my trust or fell out of the trust or I forgot about it, right? This pour-over will serves as a net. It's going to catch that asset. Pour it back into your trust.
I did not know that's how that worked. Okay, so something that was maybe unthought of when you were funding your trust or something, it's a catch-all.
Exactly.
Essentially, sounds like
Nice.
Exactly. So it still has that caveat though of if it's below the probate threshold, it's great. It just goes back into the trust and it's all good. But if it is above the probate threshold, still have to go through probate, but will follow the terms of the trust, which is going to honor your intent. So no unintended hands.
Got it. Okay, and I'm also willing to bet it doesn't. It also recognizes new debtors too that you did. If we're going to recognize new asset accounts, we're going to recognize all those new debtors, all those new liabilities too.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's a big distinction there. But like I mentioned with my uncle, for example, he didn't own a home, and it was just something small, but he still wanted to make sure his intent was going to be upheld. There's not going to be any issues between his children. He has 6 or 7. I can't remember how many kids. So it's important to have things in line. And so in his case, it was nice to just have a will, but typically a trust is what's going to be important.
That is awesome.
So is there anything that we did not ask that we should have asked you today that you wanted to talk about or that you wanted to share? Something, again, unique, something special, something that's maybe timely or relevant right now in the new year that people should know about?
I think one thing that you mentioned was about reviewing a trust. So like you said, 2003, we would say it's time to review. It's written down. The reason for that is because we've seen that on the flip side here where somebody says they have a trust and I'm named, I'm the beneficiary. It's time to administer it. They meet in our office and we've dealt with this at my old firm where everybody named as successor trustee had died. So we had to go now to court to appoint a successor trustee.
Oh.
So you're like thinking, who did I name?
Jeez.
No, he heard court and he's already trying to write a number down. You're write a number down.
How much is it going to cost you? So I would say it's important to do a review, number one, of just read through your trust. Okay, do I still have a good relationship with this individual? Is this still how I want to distribute my assets? To do a little checkup here and there. We recommend 3 to 5 years, but if something comes up sooner, like you've sold a home or you've purchased a new home and need to include that in the trust, we can guide you there as well.
So every 20 years is okay too?
20.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. It's okay. I'm not any better.
Honestly, think I haven't revised it. I want to say like since 2013, more or less. It's been a minute.
You're still better. Mine still says Cruz Family Trust 2009.
Oh, wow.
So I got a lot changed since then, okay?
2009,
Let's be honest. I'm in the same boat.
And here's another thing that I want to touch base, and you correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
But a lot of times, I'm happy to put my name, hey, William Flores, Tanya Flores, on the house, right? So the thing is, we put it in a trust, but then we name it, the Cruz Family Trust. Is it good to name yourself on these things, or should it just be something that where people maybe it'd be a little more difficult to find you? Only because, especially like,
just put it out there.
What do you mean? You want to call it like the Big Bird, the Big Bird Family Trust?
Only because when people, and I've heard this happen, right? Like they're walking by your house and everything's public records.
Oh, okay,
and obviously they come and they trip around the house. Well, guess whose last name they already know who it is lives right there.
Yeah.
Oh, the owner is Cruz. So it's probably easier for the people to find that person, right? But, so do you advise on that, or what's your take on something like that?
Question before. So it's a give and take, or you have to kind of balance some things here. So I would recommend leaving it under your family name, just because it's the way that it's associated with is the date that may be different. So typically we'll include, last name, family, living trust, and then the date that continues to stay with the trust. The reason why it may be difficult to do like a random name, like, I don't know, like Big Bird or whoever, like Elmo, I don't know.
Don't sue me, trust.
Is when we send that off to the recorder's office, the deed. Well, they're going to want to confirm that it is those two individuals that created the trust. Yeah. So they'll ask you, the assessor's office, recorder's office, will ask you for the entire copy of the trust, and that's confidential, which you would be forced, though, to give it to them. So you kind of have to be mindful about that. Got it. Well, okay, am I going to give them a copy of the trust to confirm that I have one, or should I just leave it under my name? But yeah, most people are thinking about what you're thinking about, and they'll just say, I don't care, I'll name it, a movie title or something.
I mean, Sophia, we're in California.
Yeah.
I can just imagine there's some unique and interesting trust names too.
But you can do that. Yeah, you can do that.
I would love to continue on, and I feel like we could continue on with this because I mean, all the information you've given us, your stories, it's just amazing. Thank you for sharing all that good stuff. But I would love to bring her on again.
Yeah,
if you're down with that.
Yeah, we have to go down this path because I think there's a lot of other stuff we have to uncover.
Yes.
Specifically because the generational part, number one. Number two, you have single people that we need to talk about maybe in a little more detail, things they need to think about, especially if they're single homeowners. Yeah. You also have the military aspect of this because they have this some coverage over here, but that conversation needs to happen. Correct. And then you have the married with multi-generational. Yes. You know, he's starting to have some grandchildren now, which is congratulations.
Thank you.
Which is very exciting.
Appreciate that.
But now that makes that tiered level. Yep. Okay, what happens if this, when that kind of thing? Right. And I think that really is going to be important moving forward. I mean, we talk a lot about here that home prices are really high. They've been going up, and I don't mean high like unaffordable or people can get to it. I'm saying that there's a lot of value in homes, and there's a lot of home equity. You're talking $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 that when that transfers to somebody else and they sell it, there could be or not be a tax consequence. There could or not be a family fight.
So in other words, Andy, what you're saying is we're going to need her again.
We're going to have to do it again. We got a lot more stuff to get into. So,
Sophia, where can our audience find you?
Yes. So we are, my firm is McGovern Law Group. Sam McGovern is the CEO, owner, and my boss. And we actually host a lot of seminars. So starting January, February, we'll be having a lot of seminars coming up. So it's McGovernLawGroup.com is where you can find information on seminars, a little bit about the rest of the team.
Perfect.
Well, and lastly, thank you for the show gift. This is from the McGovern Law Group. This is our first bottle of red to the show, which is awesome, and also our first gift. So thank you so much. A milestone here on the show today. First gift and first wine gift.
We appreciate you.
First of many, I'm telling all you next following guests. Well, Sophia, thank you so much for being on the show today. Memo, thank you so much for having all the questions. This is a really, really important conversation. They're all important, but for many different reasons. Correct. This one really hits home. Really hits home. Come on. It really hits home because it really hits home for me personally, for you as well. I know also your family example today, but also for those of you watching today, all of our clients that get this in the newsletter, but also people watching it on the internet, on YouTube. If you have not yet confronted the questions you need to confront to make the types of decisions we're talking about today, do that for yourself. Do that for the family and the people that you love. Help them out when you are not here and unable to. So thank you so much. This has been very enlightening and very encouraging at the same time. Thank you all for watching Friends of Mortgage Heroes, and we will see you again next time.